Good evening, everybody. For the record, Thursday, July 22nd, 2021, it's 5:15 p.m. or close to that. I have called the meeting to order. We always start with a pledge to our flag. So Councilmember Harold, would you lead us?
I'd be honored. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Harold. And for the record, we have all 7 council members with us this evening. First item on our agenda are the consent items, which should include approval of this evening's agenda, the vouchers, and the minutes from the previous meetings. I would entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion that we adopt the consent items, including or consisting of this evening's agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from our previous meetings.
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Kulas, second by Councilmember Bailey to approve this evening's consent items, including the agenda, vouchers, and the minutes from previous meetings. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Citizen comment. This would be a time when members of the audience could address the city council on something that's not on this evening's agenda. And I think we have some of our skateboarders with us today. So who wants to come up and let us know how the last 10 days have gone? Oh, we have some video too. Come on up. Who controls the video? Tammy does? You want video first or you want to talk first?
Sure, we can do the video first.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
No worries. Yeah. We can grab a few more chairs if you want to. Josh, you want to move up here?
There we go.
Been all right. I mean, after the light.
I think we got the video going. You want the video first? Okay,
It's trying.
it's going. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's up?
I have some other videos, but like, I mean, if the first information we got was from Casey one night, and he came to the park a little after dark. He didn't have anything to clean up, but he found those needles. And then 3 days prior, like I've been going down there every night at 12, like maybe 1 o'clock, just on my free time, because I've actually like tried to invest in the park. Like
When you say 12 or 1,
Yeah,
afternoon?
12
or-
afternoon,
Okay.
like at night after all the lights shut off, and I invested in the park, I bought the bench, and I've tried to like put my own, effort into it, since there's been a lot of like, scrutiny against skateboarders for the longest time. But 2 days after this, all of us were there, and there was like a kind of a homeless male, I guess, there, but he dropped a bag, and I saw this bag. So I picked it up, and I started going through it just to find out, to make sure there was nothing bad, because there was like 20 kids there. And I opened it up, and a meth pipe fell out, and it was like full of meth and all this stuff. And that was literally during the daytime even. We're even having a problem during the daytime keeping them out. So at nighttime, after the lights shut off, it becomes like a dark area in the bowls where they can hide. So officers aren't gonna like get out of their car and walk up, shine the light. So it kind of becomes a hub for like a safe area, even though the sprinklers kind of get them wet. We really don't care if the sprinklers like get it at night, We'd prefer the lights stay on all night, but we're just trying to participate actively in the community and make sure that we're cleaning up, but we're seeing a lot of activity at night. There's people coming on the train. The train gets to the station
Right.
at about like 10, right when the lights shut off, and then it stops because every time I drive and leave from the park after the lights shut off, we have to go under the train bridge because we can't go up to Orondo, Pybus, and turn up towards the plaza because the train's blocking it. So if anyone's train hopping, they're getting off right when those lights are shutting off. And they're seeing all of us leave, and then they're showing up and doing drugs, and we've even seen a few people tied off with bandanas.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. Yeah, it's just sad, We don't want to see like any kids, because I can imagine if a kid found that bag, and then like the homeless guy seen him and confronted him and tried to get it from him, and like end up beating up some little kid, because he found some drugs.
Right.
It's just really kind of sketchy because we got put down there in the first place. We didn't really want to be down there.
Anybody else have something to? Yeah.
I will just say, I want to thank you guys for turning them on in the first place. It was a great experience for us to be able to voice our concerns in a respectful manner, and especially at 13, and to see that our voices were heard. And since the lights have been on, like, it just feels much safer there as a skater doing the tricks, but also as a parent sitting there watching, keeping people out. I have heard, just because this has all been kind of like, on social media and stuff, people comment, and a lot of, not me, this isn't how I think, but a lot of people think like, oh, that place is, dangerous, I'm not going to go there. I think that's super sad because we have this really awesome thing, and it shouldn't be that way. So I really want you guys to think about keeping them on, and then also keeping them on all night to, I can understand skaters need to be done at a certain time. And we had an officer come to get the pouch from us that was full of drugs. I was there, and I talked to him, and he said that his chief and him both, they all agree that the lights need to be kept on. And he said then there's cameras. So if people are still there, they can see what's going on and they can come take care of it. So I don't think that the fear would be that the skaters will abuse their time. But it's more important to keep that was 30 feet from him and everybody else.
Right.
And that rock, I've seen little kids climb it barefoot. I mean, it's awful. So that's all I want to say. Thank you, and just please consider keeping them on.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I've been skating down there since, the last meeting, and I'm always down there. And, what I've noticed with the lights on is they're not, and I don't even know how to, classify them, but, homeless, vagrants, the people that are doing the bad. Now where the lights are, dude, they're on the they're on the outskirts. They're out by the tunnel, by the walking bridge, they're along the path, they're along, by the bathroom. That bathroom's a nightmare.
Yeah, and we've had a bunch of vandalism this week in that.
It's like a full-on, I don't mean to barge, but it's a drug den. It's disgusting. And no normal person uses it. It's awful.
So what if we close the bathrooms down at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but left the lights on? That's a
No
problem for you
normal
guys if
person
you got to
uses
use them.
them. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes it any better.
I've seen a few double people go in there, and I've almost wanted to bang on the door and be like, yo, you guys knock
Yeah.
those up. 'Cause
We
it's
have the
been-
same issue at Met Hall Park, by the way.
Yeah,
It's the
it's
same
been
issue.
girl.
Yeah.
I live right up the street. I live on Kittitas, so I see it. I drive by it every single day. I took the pictures of Washington, and
Yeah.
I just know some parts are sketchy,
Yeah.
and they need to stay on. But honestly, I feel like it's the best interest for there. I went there. The cops were there, 12 o'clock at night. People coming even off of that roundabout.
Mhm.
It's very dark. Even people riding the loop
Yeah.
trail at night, because I was talking to them. There's people who work graveyard who ride that loop, and they have lights on their bike. They have really nice electric bikes with really nice light systems. But when you come down that trail off of that loop in
Mhm.
that dark section, there's all those homeless encampments, and Lord like forbid, like someone gets jumped or beat up and robbed of their bike
Yeah.
or anything because it's so dark and they can't see anyone coming around that corner.
Yeah.
And I've known people
Sorry,
that
Josh.
want to go to the dog park late at night too because they work graveyard and their
Right.
dogs are all day in the house and they have them kennel trained and they get off work, then they want to take them to the dog park, but the dog park's only lit up in the middle section,
Right.
you know, like by the little dog statue and the water fountain and stuff. But I honestly think it'd be everyone's best interest because some of those vandalisms were threats from some psychopath on the loop trail.
Yep.
I read them. The cops told me what they said when I showed up as well, because like I went to clean up at 12 when we were looking at it. I've been actively going there because like I want to stand up, you know, and I have flashlights and everything. It's super
Right.
dark for me even to look and keep up. You know, I have a pooper scooper and a garbage pail down there, so
Yeah.
pick up anything that we don't want to touch because we don't usually carry gloves on us. You know.
Is there anything else?
But yeah, like basically, like from, I guess, kind of finish what I was, where the lights are, they don't come in, they don't congregate
Mhm.
where it's lit up. And, we're seeing them, just really like heavy on, the train tracks, along the fence lines and where the lights are. And I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out there, but is there any way we can get it, because I really believe, especially because I brought those last two articles about, a lit park, it secures the park and its users, from, the people that are, there to, use the dog park, go skateboard, and it brings in the good. And it'd be nice to even be able to, just have a few more lights just to light it up. I mean, it really
It'd make it easier for the officers to see if there's any
it
vagrants
deters the
in the area
bad,
too. Maybe one or two on the same poles,
I mean,
just
yeah,
on
we
each
could
side.
maybe
but
it's just an idea.
That could be.
I mean,
When the
Funded
lights
by
were put on, they weren't designed to light up the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
skateboard park, right? They were there more for security issues. They
Yeah.
weren't like baseball lights or these weren't those sort of lights. These were just sort of
yeah,
in the general area, so.
So we
Um,
should use them for security, definitely. And that's
Yeah,
the
and I
main
think
force.
that's sort of what they're there for.
Okay, so yeah, that would definitely be best interest all night for
Okay.
security purposes.
Well, I've heard, just talking to staff, there's been more vandalism since the lights have been on. I'm not sure why that is, but there has been some, so
Dude,
we're sort of looking at that. I'm assuming it's those people that are the troublemakers in that area. And, the other issue we have, quite frankly, is, your Washington State Supreme Court has said possession of drugs is not illegal in our state. And so it really ties the hands of your police officers. And as much as you think that guy holding a carton with meth in it or a meth pipe, you and I all think that should be illegal and that guy should be,
I don't think that part, I think public display of
Yeah.
open use, just
Yeah.
like containers, just like
Yeah.
I've been arrested and multiple people have been arrested
Yeah.
for like drinking an open container or
Yeah.
something like that. It's along those.
courts throw that stuff out all the time on us now. So I mean, our hands for that sort of stuff are really tied. And our officers will work right up to the letter of the law every time because that's what they're trained to do. But that sort of stuff is difficult for us. So
Yeah.
I think I'm inclined to keep the lights on for a while. Maybe we'll experiment with going a little bit later just to sort of see. But I'm glad it's getting, I was down there at 7 o'clock this morning riding the loop when there was someone skateboarding at 7. Wasn't any of you guys, but someone was down there at 7 this morning.
Yeah, a lot
skateboarding.
of people have been trying to get down there early because it's been so hot.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the most active times are 7 to 11 in the morning, and then you take a break all day, and then
Yeah.
go back at 7 at night and skate
Yeah.
till 10.
It was nice to see the video with all the people skateboarding. So that
Yeah,
was
that's been
nice
every
to see
night.
lots of people
It's been every night.
down there doing it. I wish there was an easier answer for the other parts of it
I
because
understand that.
it's not only Hale, but it's Met Howe and it's other parks in our valley. And
Yeah.
we do have some security cameras that do bring some stuff up from time to time that we can sort of get, but
Is there any
we
way
can't
we
put security cameras in the bathrooms
Yeah,
and we know
no, I
that's
know.
where the issues are, right?
Is there any way we could advocate for funding for like a security to be designated for the skate park? Because I know multiple skate parks in California have a security guard that goes there during the hours of operation.
Right.
And it's funded by the skaters in the community just to keep it a safe place. And it kind of really deters any transients or any people that are trying to.
If you guys are interested in hiring or putting a nonprofit together that hires a security guard, you can certainly do that. We have the security guards that,
Like Pacific Security and other.
yeah, we have them that go and lock the bathrooms at night. So now we'll have a security, because we don't have staff working that hour at night, park staff. So we have the security guard will come and lock that bathroom at Hill Park.
Yeah, yeah. He
At
comes
probably
pretty
little bit after 10, I'm guessing.
He comes a little earlier than that because people have been like, it's
Yeah,
been so bad.
Yeah, so he locks it,
And
then our maintenance people go there in the morning and have to clean it up,
Yeah.
right? And then this morning, they were mowing the grass and doing whatever they did. So if you guys wanted to hire somebody or raise money through a nonprofit to help pay for a security guard, we will work with you on something that would have somebody there more permanent, as long as it's not a safety issue, right? I want my police guys to make sure that
Yeah.
it was
Well,
safe for the
We're
security
all
guard.
advocating, we're the ones that are there every day and no one really like goes against, we're 20 years experience, 25 years skating, and people ask us what to do.
Yeah.
They don't like deter from our opinion. They like look up to, I help him learn stuff. Like I'm gonna try and start like offering classes, but that's, there, but I try to do it for free. So then people see like you learn patience, you learn all this other stuff like integrity, like perseverance, all this stuff is skating.
Coming to city council meetings, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
All the stuff you learn. Government, you kidding me? You learn it all.
Could I ask, like what the video says, what is it? Met Howe Park is lit up all night long, the playground, and there, Washington Park is lit up. What's the one up on Western?
I think they experiment, yeah.
Are those lit up all night long?
So Dave, our parks director isn't here, so I can't answer that
I
for
think
you.
they are, but I think with what you guys will see, I think we'll eventually see that it's more beneficial. They'll end up staying.
And
all night.
what kind of vandalism are you guys seeing with the lights on?
There's graffiti and stuff at my house, because it
Yeah,
happened
just
at
the
my house, it
bathrooms.
happened all
Yeah.
down my alley.
Yeah, it's in all the parks. It's the same sort of.
Yeah.
we
That's
have-
just the
graffiti.
one thing I want to add, and then I'll be done.
Yeah.
In the video, I was trying to also show.
Oh, you took the video?
Well, we put all of our videos together
Okay,
and made
okay,
a little
okay.
movie out of it.
Okay.
But I wanted you to see how well it's used.
Yeah.
And it's different stages of darkness but if you go to any park, you look around, there's never any litter at this park. And
Mhm.
it's not the same at any playground, you'll see litter, McDonald's, this, that. It's not like that here. And so
I know you guys take care of it. I
just
get
want
that,
you
yeah.
to not, like the vandalism that's happening, please don't connect it with lights at the skate park.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Listen, I'm just,
Yeah.
you're reporting back what you saw and I'm reporting back what's been reported to me. So just out of open communication,
And the
yeah.
idea of closing it earlier, I don't think it would affect any of the skaters because they're all too sketched out to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have to leave if we have to use the bathroom because
we
it's,
run
we see we can see people tie their arms off,
Mhm.
they hang out at
Gazebo.
the picnic tables.
Yeah.
Go in there. And so it's just like, you just don't go there.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
So I think we'll keep them on for a while. I'll talk with Chief and make Chief and Dave Erickson and us communicate about whether or not we add or subtract from that. But
And I think, I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry. But the officer said, when he came down to pick up that bag of drugs
Mhm.
and paraphernalia, he said at shift change, actually that night, that they were actually talking and they were for keeping the lights on all night so they can see. what's
Chief
going
mentioned that to me today when I
on.
saw him.
Yeah,
that-
so that's kind of a,
Yeah.
Just so they could see, that's what I'm saying, visually, like when you pull up in the parking lot, you can see pretty far, you can see like
Yeah.
the crest. If you can see all the way to there, and he can drive up on the loop trail, because that's what he usually does, and then pulls around the other side, and then drives down the loop trail, drives across the grass, and then goes back down the loop trail.
But just so you know, the chief of police always doesn't get everything he wants either. So
Yeah, no, for sure.
You gotta
I
remember,
understand. I
that,
was just
he
gonna
makes
throw that out
suggestions,
there.
we make policy
Yeah.
choices, but he did mention that to me, so he's being consistent with what he told you, is that they would
We appreciate
probably like to have those lights on longer than perhaps we would, but,
I got one more thing to add.
yeah.
When you look at Hale Park, where it was, and then what it's slowly changing. It is getting better, especially with the lights on in the park, where it's lit. I'm a total advocate for public skate parks, and really, I think skateboarding cleans up areas. It really does, because it brings the good in, and it does not, it kind of like pushes out. Skateboarding is really tough, and it takes like tough individuals to, do that. I guess I hate calling it a sport, but that's what it is technically.
It's extreme sport.
Yeah, it's really rough, gritty, and if we could see someday, in other parks, and I've talked with Dave, revamping Pioneer Park. I know we talked to a Kiwanis member the last time, or 2 weeks ago, the council meeting afterwards, and he's just like, I didn't know this, but Locomotive Park, the Kiwanis kind of, I don't know if they run that and then the city maintains it.
They've got a naming right to it, and they're supposed to help us sort of maintain it and keep it clean and do it through this.
Lions on that.
Lions has that one?
But I mean, if you put something positive, essentially like a skate park or a skate feature, it's gonna bring, good in. And I mean, that was just an idea for future
Have people
parks. I
reporting
mean,
more.
it's a really good, you look at Hale, I think Hale's probably the most used park, probably out of in the city.
Mhm.
I mean, because you go there and there's kids there at that skate park all day long. Same with the East Wenatchee at Kenroy. Even at Pioneer, it's so
There's a lot of
old
scooters
and
and bikers.
super
Yeah,
decrepit,
yeah.
but there's
Yeah.
always kids there and parents and families. So just, an
Okay.
idea to throw out.
But we'll keep working with you.
Yeah, that'd be stoked.
All right, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Glad we got you, glad you got you all in this time.
Good. Yeah, thank you for
Yep.
everything.
You
Your
bet.
time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I just want to
coming
make a
back in.
quick clarification.
Yeah.
Possession of drugs is still against the law.
It is.
Yeah, it's just-
It's not a felony or it's not a arrestable offense.
It's a non-felony
Okay, so it's like a
now.
parking ticket.
Still
Right.
legal, though.
Well, no,
Still, like-
it's like a disorderly conduct
Okay.
now. It's a misdemeanor. But the paraphernalia that was shown in the video, the needles,
Mhm.
that is lawful to possess now, where it was unlawful to possess earlier.
Okay, so you can have a needle.
Yeah, you can have a needle, you can have a meth pipe. Yeah,
Still
anything that you
illegal
can
to
use
litter
to ingest the drug into your body, you can now have.
Okay.
The residuals on it, that's the only part that's different is the residual heroin and the meth.
Drug culture.
I didn't show the meth, but I got that on my phone.
That's okay.
We're okay.
We'll trust you on
Yeah,
that.
we're okay with that one.
5 minutes later, I'm telling you, those little kids that found a half broken baby, like, oh, I wish this was virgin sex. I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Little kid threw it away. So imagine, I'm just thinking, if you found that package, what's this? Like, it's just sad.
Well, thanks for being down there and helping out.
I appreciate everything you guys do.
Yep.
A lot longer, so I can stay there and be more comfortable going down there. Go down there with Mace and watch all the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a public hearing item. For public hearing items, we'll hear from our staff. We'll ask questions of staff. We'll turn it over to the public for any comment they may be willing to make. So this is regarding our 6-year transportation improvement program. So Stephen, Matt, Gary, who's coming up? Looks like it's Gary.
Gary Owen Show.
Full council, isn't this great?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor and full council. I'm Gary Owen, the city engineer, and I'm here for my annual, bring the revised 6-year transportation improvement plan up for public hearing and potential adoption by the council. So I think you have all been through this at least a time or two in the past. My agenda report actually doesn't even change a whole lot from year to year. The plan can change quite a bit, and I was just going to highlight some changes between, that I was just explaining to Sydney with the paper, and changes basically from last year's plan to the 21 tip to the 22 tip, if you will, if I can start out that way. Or do you have anything different that you'd like to see me do?
No, this is fine.
For my show here. So you've got both the current tip that's currently adopted in your packet, and then you have last year's tip. I've got the same here in front of me. And like my agenda report says, the new tip basically is an update of last year's tip. So there's a big new project on this year's tip that you've got that we'll talk about in a minute. And the old tip, I'm going to go through and kind of highlight a number of the projects that were removed and why they don't show up on this year's tip anymore. And a couple of the new projects that are on there, just to highlight those for you, and then I can answer any questions you might have if that sounds good. So as far as projects that we took off of, that we're removing from our current tip, they would include, let's start from the beginning, Gary. They would include the Tacoma Street project, which was number 2 on last year's project. And if anybody's been down in that area, you can see it's all tore up, and the intent is to have that back together this year. It doesn't need to be on the tip anymore. Maple Street was number 4 on the current tip. That'll soon be under construction from the canal down to just, what street, Keith, am I looking for? From the canal to,
Western,
not all the way to Western.
Benoit.
Benoit, yeah. We are going to do some restriping to Western in conjunction with that.
It's going to need to be redone when they get done driving trucks on it.
Construction equipment,
Mhm.
sounds like, okay. Also, number 17 on this year's tip, that's gone from the new proposed tip. That's Miller, Montana. That's a project, pedestrian project crossing Miller Street that's under construction right now. Project number 30, the SR 285 Easy Street, Penny Road, northbound off-ramp project. That one is, that's in the list of projects that the PUD is committed to doing in conjunction with their new facility out in Old Station. They had planned to complete that this year, but we just recently learned since I finished the tip that they won't do it until next year. But the plan is that work will be done still before they start to populate their new facility out in Old Station.
You
And
guys know we bought the right of way from Beckstead, who put in that little building, so that we've already controlled the right of way that will connect it over as you come off the off-ramp.
technology way extension is
Yeah.
is another term for it, to make the little connection across there. There's another project on here related to that. At the end, the number 65, the Easy Street and Penny Road intersection that's on this year's tip, that was taken off. That's also reconfiguring that intersection there at Penny Road and Easy Street. Actually, the plan is that what is a ramp now is actually going to become a two-way street south of that intersection at Penny and Easy, coming down to this new extended technology center way. So those projects are off. There's no funding need to keep them on the plan, even though they won't technically get constructed until next year. And we can hold the PUD to that before they get approval to move into their building. Other projects that are off of last year's tip is Confluence Parkway Phase 1. That was number 40, and the McKittrick Street, Burlington Northern grade separation, that was number 42. Those are now gone, but in a minute I'll show you how those were incorporated into a larger project on this new tip. And the Gun Road Urban Upgrades project number 52 is gone from this new tip. That is a road we've been negotiating with the DOT. They've been making improvements to it, and we will be coming sometime later this year to the council and asking to take that road into the city system. That's if you're familiar with that, where the State Patrol is, from Euclid up to the kind of the
theaters? Yeah.
west side of the Gateway Cinemas out there. So they've been bringing that up, putting sidewalks in and making it a little bit more urban friendly, and we've been talking for years about the fact that probably makes sense to be a public facility and not an easement as it is, private easement. So those are the projects that were removed from our currently adopted tip. We call that our 21 tip. This new tip that you've got in front of you, that's a little bit shorter actually, which is good because we have a lot of projects to try to keep track of here. New things that were added, the big one is number 8, is this Apple Capital Loop, $102 million project you're all familiar with. That one, basically, that absorbed the couple that I mentioned disappeared, being the McKittrick Street grade separation and the Confluence Phase to the confluence south. And I think I may have missed the fact, we had that, the Ped Bridge also on there as a separate project in the past. That should be gone now also and wrapped into this number 8. So we got what looks like we're going to be seeing a funding agreement for $92 million. We have to find 10 more, and we're going to get the south end of Confluence Parkway funded and McKittrick and nice little ped separation over the railroad tracks down there at the Ped Bridge on the south end, and even a crossing over Highway 28 for East Wenatchee over on the east side with all that infra money. So that's the big, in a nutshell. It's just a one-liner there, number 8. It's very possible and probable maybe that we'll be back. We'll need to supplement this for funding purposes at some point after funding agreements get put in place and commitments are identified as far as preliminary engineering phases, right-of-way phases, and construction phases. We may have to come back and add those in formally at some point.
And just so you're aware, you know, they shorted us 10, but Congresswoman Schreier in the surface transportation bill, as does Senator Murray, has 8.4, 8.6 million for the overpass for the 2 pedestrian, which would cover that, most of that gap. So in our mind, those I think are pretty positive. So our gap really isn't 10, it's 1.4.
And since we got that teed up, another new project, well, it's a carryover, but it's been changed a little bit. I'll just bring that up, and because the mayor's working so hard on getting it funded. This is project number 18. That's the rest of Confluence Parkway, basically. We call it Confluence Parkway Phase 2 from Holly Street north. That's another $82 million that we're looking for. That's the project that will complete Confluence Parkway and make it a complete connection all the way from the Igloo to the State Patrol, basically out in Old Station. Other new projects that are in here.
Nice that you use recognizable landmarks in your description.
Anytime you can get the Igloo in there, any sort of public meeting, you're doing good. You managed to do that. Yeah.
Remember that next performance evaluation. Number 23 in here, it's a little project. It's just in here because we put in a grant application for it. We're trying to get a few $100,000 to do something nice in the new roundabout out at US 2 and Easy Street that the DOT will be constructing next year in 2022. Next to that, number 24 is the 9th Street Corridor Safety and Complete Streets Improvements Project. If you remember, we brought you a plan last year where we looked at the whole corridor, basically from the tracks on 9th Street all the way to Miller Street. We had a few different options on better ways to get pedestrians across, especially, and we've actually implemented some of those right at Chelan and 9th with all the added pedestrian load down there with Confluence Health. But this project basically would include a reconfiguration of our synchronized 15 signals on Mission and Chelan Street, SR 285, and go to 3 lanes instead of 4 lanes kind of squeezed in between the curbs on 9th Street. Make it easier for trucks to turn, a little bit more comfortable for pedestrians, and add bike lanes in there. That's what this project is. It's in the tip now, so we'll probably see, if we can go after some kind of bike and ped money or some sort of grant funding for that one. And then other new projects, you got to go quite a ways down the list. The Arundel Street, no, that's a carryover. Worthen Street, no, Arundel Street multimodal, that's a new one. That's down in the area where, no.
This 55?
Yeah, Arundel, that's the one we just did the little pop-up event on this week. That's actually a carryover. My note-taking is terrible here. Number 56, Worthen Street multi-use pathway upgrades. That's a new one. That's down in the area with the folks that were just in here talking about the skate park. We have from Thurston Street, the intersection of Thurston and Worthen down there south to the skate park. We've got a lot of that. The pathway, the Apple Capitol Loop is basically commonly paved with that roadway. So there's just basically a little 4-inch white line separating the two. And there's been a lot of requests to make improvements down there, as busy as the pathway is and spilling over into the road. So basically it's not real well scoped. We've got $1 million in there basically that would widen things out a little bit, make the pathway a little bit wider, excuse me, and separate it more appropriately from the roadway. And potentially add sharrows or something like that for the, people that, like Frank, that's probably riding his bike at 30 miles an hour down there, so they can just go out and ride on the road and not have to avoid the leashes and the kids in the strollers and that sort of thing on the path.
Today I had to avoid Jared. He was watering the plants on First Street at 7 o'clock when I went down. So I had to go right down the middle of the street, but it was fine. He was doing his work. Yeah.
So that's kind of a recap of the changes from last year's tip to this year's tip. And I would be happy to entertain any questions or comments. We went over this and talked with just last night with the Planning Commission. I think Stephen chastised me. I think we spent over an hour talking with the Planning Commission about the tip, so that they're pretty well informed, and they didn't have anything in particular that they wanted to see changed on this particular 2022 tip.
Gary, can I ask a question about item 21, the reconfiguration intersection at Maple and Northern?
You
Or
certainly
North
may.
Wenatchee Avenue, sorry. Is this the additional turn lane addition?
Number 21?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I would advocate for having that moved up in the schedule a little bit, because I don't know if we've all noticed the traffic in that area has exploded. It kind of went through the roof when the post office moved in there, but now it's an absolute mess.
Yeah.
I'm there every day getting the mail. When I go at 11, it's certainly reasonable, but I don't go there at the heavy times. So what this would do is we got property from the Kellogg family, and it would allow for a sort of a freer right-hand turn. I've seen as much backup on, as I was telling Gary, on North Wenatchee Avenue, because they've had to change the timing on the lights for those people coming in from Hooked on Toys that direction. But it is a super busy intersection. This is one of the ones, Keith, that's on the funding package for the current STP program that I'm working through the Transportation Council to see if we can get it funded. I don't know where I'm at. I'm probably 50-50 that it'll get funded this round. If it doesn't, it will get funded next round, which is in 2 more years. But even if we get it funded now, are you 2 years away from getting a project done there? If I got STP funding, in the next month?
Yeah, it'd probably be a push to actually see that done next year, and it's probably not going to make a significant change in the congestion levels.
Yeah.
Adding that eastbound right turn lane.
Well, what's happening now is there's one lane to turn left. If you're coming down Maple Street, there's one lane to turn left, one lane to go straight or turn right.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is, they did change the light so they get a free left turn for a bit.
Yeah.
But it still does not alleviate enough of the backup. So the problem is during busy times, you got people trying to go up Maple Street.
Right.
Their turn lane is full, so people wanting to go into Winco have to basically block the lane. And I've been in there several times where it's backing clear up into the middle of the intersection. And then you've also got people on the avenue trying to turn up Maple Street. That backs up and now blocks traffic trying to go northbound.
It's on our radar. What will happen?
It's going to get worse as we build new houses up above there, and I think we should be proactive at it.
Yeah, so I think,
That's my own.
yeah, so I think, listen, if I can somehow squeeze it, and it would be a lot of back and forth here, but if I can get it funded, which I will try my best, you're still looking at probably 2 years, right? 1 year to design, 1 year to build.
Yeah, and we're still working on ITS improvements with the DOT on the avenue. That's probably the next best thing, is a more technologically advanced controller for that signal that can take advantage of little gaps where you can steal a little bit of time but yeah, we're saturated there. So there's a few times during the day when it's going to be like being on an interstate over on the west side in the afternoon. You're going to crawl through. It's not a safety problem,
Well,
fortunately, but it is covered in the big project, the $102 million project, but that's 4 or 5 years out before that's constructed.
Where it becomes a safety problem is it pushes traffic out into the neighborhoods to get around it. Because as Mr. Kulas has said many times, traffic is like water. It's going to take the path of least resistance, and that's through the neighborhoods.
Yeah. I think also a little bit Tacoma Street being under construction and being closed right now is also kind of.
Yeah, it's not
contributing
helping, but it was bad before that got tore up.
Yeah.
It's on our radar.
And it is, like the mayor mentioned, it's one of the 5 grant applications, I think, that we put in. I just mentioned the one for the improvements in the roundabout out there at US 2 and 97. That one is another one, although it was already in last year's TIP. So.
Work cut out for me now. Keep putting pressure on. All right. Any other questions for Gary before we turn it over to the public? Because Sydney told me she was going to testify, so. All right. Any members of the audience wish to address the council on our 6-year transportation improvement program? Seeing no takers, I will turn it over to the council for any action they may be willing to take. Which I believe is just adoption of the ordinance.
Your Honor, I make a motion for the City Council to adopt ordinance number 2021-22, adopting a revised and extended comprehensive street program for the ensuing 6 years of the City of Wenatchee as required by the laws of the State of Washington, with or without any modifications that may be desired after the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Huffaker, second by Councilmember Hornby to adopt ordinance 2021-22, adopting a revised and extended comprehensive street program for the ensuing 6 years for the City of Wenatchee as required by the laws of the State of Washington, with or without any modifications that may be desired after the public hearing, for which there were none. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
So our next item is a work session item to discuss retaining walls, fences, and easements. I know you've asked, the council's asked staff to spend some time looking at how people build up their properties and building setbacks and all of that sort of stuff. So I think they've done some preliminary work looking at other cities' codes, and they have something for you. So gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. The privilege is always to come and share some thoughts and ideas with you and what we've been working on. Matt's been doing a lot of research on the questions that you've posed to us on this topic. So just as an overview, a reminder, we reported last to you in September last year, and you gave us some additional directions to look at walls adjacent to rear property lines and utility easements. We've looked at our code. We've done research of other jurisdictions. We continue to come back to challenges with retaining walls. Sometimes they require a building permit. Sometimes they do not require a building permit. And it's very difficult to regulate things that don't require building permits. So we've tried to do the best we can and coming back to you with some ideas for discussion. An overview of our discussion tonight. So what we've done is looked at, again, the rear property where we see the most challenge and issues recently with walls that are fill rather than a cut, where someone builds up their property and builds a wall as opposed to they're on a steep slope and they cut into it and retain the slope. Retaining walls and utility easements. And then while we were looking at these issues, we get a lot of questions about retaining walls. As development, as new residential structures have moved into the foothills, we see a lot more retaining walls being built. And so we have taken some of the questions that folks ask us and researched those and looking for some ways that we can address those. And then we have a few questions that we want to pose to you at the end from our research. So first, looking at the topic of retaining walls in rear properties. You may recall this image from last year. This is a retaining wall fill that was constructed adjacent to another property with an existing 6-foot fence. And in looking at ways that this might be mitigated, option is to require a setback for new retaining walls that require a building permit. Again, going back to my initial conversation or point is it's often impossible for us to find out when people are building walls until after they're built, if they don't require a building permit. But we do have the ability to control some things, and so this first option in discussion is where we do have that ability to have oversight, retaining wall that requires a building permit, so over 4 feet in height, or that has a surcharge behind it would require a building permit. In those instances, we could require a setback of 5 feet, which would push that wall back, would allow some space between, again, in this instance, the wall and the fence, would allow a property owner to get between the wall and the fence to clean out any debris that blows in there or vegetation. Another option that we have brought up to discuss with you tonight is to amend the city code in Title 10 and 11, our subdivision ordinance, that would prohibit new walls with it over 3 feet in height within 5 feet of a rear property line. So this would be for new subdivisions where we do have, where we do review that grading plan, or we work with Public Works on a land surface modification permit, or new multifamily projects that we review as part of a commercial building permit. Often we get grading plans with those and how they're going to lay those lots out. So,
Just for clarification, those are fill walls.
yeah, all fill walls. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think I just maybe preface as we're talking about walls, it's the fill walls that we're talking about, not the cut walls. So if you ever need some clarification, that's what I'll be talking about tonight. And then as part of that option, you could potentially allow a taller wall if it was necessary and we had a geotechnical professional or an engineer provide their expertise of why a larger wall might be necessary. And that may occur to provide for utilities, to get stormwater to flow in the right direction. There are a variety of reasons why subdivisions, multifamily projects fill and move dirt around to do that. Matt did a lot of research, and he did find some jurisdictions that do regulate walls starting at about 30 inches. So again, it's something that we could look into as part of, as we refine the draft and come back with more information. But again, those generally don't require a building permit, and so it would be part of a public information campaign, right, to talk to folks about, hey, if you're going to build more than 3 feet, then you may need an additional setback. An implementation challenge becomes a code enforcement challenge as well.
This wouldn't be something we'd be recommending for existing single-family lots. Council member Kowalski and Paul in great order. Those would be really tough to enforce. But we do have, like Schreiber mentioned, looking at a new subdivision, and that's where these issues have occurred. We have an opportunity to regulate that, put some things in the covenant, put some platforms. look at their final grading plan. And for this subdivision, that was addressed that issue. And on multifamily development, we have that review process. So we can take a look at it. But so that gives us the ability to affect that. But for existing single-family lots, it's really problematic. And quite frankly, that isn't where we've seen the issues. The multifamily developments, the new flats.
Any questions up to this point? This is kind of a,
So you referred to a grading plan when they come in and they're talking about a new development. They bring you a grading plan. Does that grading plan show you what their plan is with all the existing surrounding properties? I mean, this is what I keep coming back to, is trying to get them to blend the new neighborhood in with the old. And especially in a few cases, in the cases of Beeler's residence, there was a perfect matching slope all the way down through the whole neighborhood. And the contractor decided he didn't want that slope at all. And he filled the whole back of the lot up, which gave several people nothing but a wall to look at. Is that grading plans something that would show you if that's going to be done or not?
yes, yeah. And that, again, it comes down to often the utilities and making sure that properties drain the way they're supposed to the stormwater system, sewer systems, water. So I think as we have developed a lot of our flatter portions of our city, that was a lot easier to do. As we're moving more into the hillside, as we're looking at some of these projects that are dealing with a little bit more topography, getting those utilities to work is more challenging. And so sometimes those lots need to move the dirt to adjust that elevation in order to make those work. But yes, generally we see with either a land surface modification permit or the civil drawings for subdivisions or multifamily projects, they do provide some information on grading and how they're going to move the dirt.
And that would definitely clue you in as whether there's going to be some kind of a retaining wall, if any, needed.
Correct.
We can, work with, the city team members as if there's interest in going down the route, we can work with engineering, public works to sort of tailor that so that we can have plans submitted that make sure they're calling these things out. I guess the other thing is when the city adopted our updated housing code standards and design standards, the other component that, so for example, on the wall that you see here, it would be dropped under this proposal, another foot down. And then there would also, under our design standards, they would have had to put a fence or landscape buffer above that as well, part of the interface. So that, that's another provision that can sort of soften that, and blend that with the house up above. And hopefully the combination improvement. But other jurisdictions have done that. So, whether it's 30 inches like we've seen or 36. Talk about it.
I guess the other reality in this that I see, well, two. We always believe that people are going to do what they tell us they're going to do. Right? It doesn't always work out. The slope is nice, looks good. I decided after I got to okie dokie from community development and public works and everything, I'm running the cat. I decided I'm going to do something different. So my question is, are we tough enough to tell someone, too bad, so sad, take it out? And that is a problem. That's generally what we don't do. We try to negotiate some little in between, and it's either you do what you say you're going to do or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to spend your money taking the doggone thing out.
That's something that we would want, if the council wants to go this direction, we want the support to do just that, because it will be, there will be code enforcement that happens because of the proposed
Yeah,
regulation.
and we're only here because of people that really did something that they said they weren't going to do. And then I guess the other thing that I'm sure that you worked over this is the same as accessory building setbacks. You know, one of the reasons I like to see them being able to go to a property line and whatnot is that you just ended up creating a 5-foot patch of weeds. You know, look at the fence on Western between, well, roughly Cherry to Castle Rock. You know, you got this 3-foot, 5-foot wide, no person's lands weeds there. And so when you have these retaining wall setbacks, how, I mean, like I said, I always believe the best in people, but reality bites.
Downside certainly. The one nice thing about the 5-foot setback for the taller wall is when you have a little more space to get down there and maintain it. Having a lower wall in the front, if they do a wall, gets you down there, you could bring that lower wall up to the property line. Let's see. I just wanted to mention that we did have discussions with Public Works, with the city engineer on utilities. Mr. Owen can speak to how Public Works considers and works with utility easements and retaining walls. Would you mind speaking to that, Gary?
I could just say that, you know, whether it be in a plat or after a plat, with a new utility easement, our boilerplate utility easement just says no wall or structure, because we have to maintain it, right? So we don't want to have to pay to replace the wall or rebuild the wall. So our boilerplate says no wall or structure in the easement. But, you know, 4-foot walls and under are exempt too, unless you guys decide to legislate that they need to be permitted.
Then that's under, those are easements that our utility division looks at. But then a lot of these are set up for homeowners association irrigation easements or things of that nature that don't get necessarily the review from our public works staff.
Well, as Mr. Newenswander said, I mean, we regulate things that don't have permits. We do it all the time. The reality is when you don't have a permit, it's hard to review this stuff. So even if a retaining wall is less than what needs a permit, that's the language on our easement. That means it's not supposed to be there. How the heck would we know? I mean, how would the enforcement agency know if you're not required to get a permit? It's problematic.
Well, but then coming back to your point, unless we enforce it, because in the case of Beeler, this was notified that a retaining wall was being built in the easement on top of their irrigation pipe.
Okay, but again, that's
But it
civil.
was under 4 feet, so we
Well,
said we can't do anything.
Right, and that area, as they pointed there, the irrigation easement it's a civil matter between property owners. It's not a public utility easement. It's not one of our easements. It's an easement granted. You know, most properties in this area have just this blanket easement about irrigation can run wherever you want. So
I
think
thought that was something that was on the plot map, was that easement.
Well, it could have been, but again, it was for a facility that is not ours.
But we don't
wasn't
manage the
city.
utility, that utility component. We just, fundamentally, when you do a plat, you need to make sure that the utility has the ability to get through. But that's not a utility we manage.
And then you know how fast code enforcement works,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that is not, you violated and you got a week to get your wall out of there. I mean, that takes code enforcement and multiple letters, and those things don't move quickly, right? They just don't.
Yeah, here are, sorry.
Even though, you know, and again, back to the Beeler one, which really kind of set this whole thing in motion. Even though it is, as you say, you know, between two property owners, it's not ours kind of thing. But it seems to me that we have some, as a city, we have some interest in those things being workable or usable, just I guess for nothing else than to avoid these kinds of conflicts. That, you know, your picture there that shows that, you know, that underneath that, whatever it is, you know, it's probably 24 inches between the fence and the wall. If they have to dig that pipe up, you know, I don't even know one of those little tiny bobcats can get into that tight of space. So that's handwork, and that's ridiculous. You know?
Well, and the wall's gonna fail as soon as you start digging, so the wall's gonna have to be removed
Yeah,
and then put back.
and then put back, and so it seems that we do have an obligation to have some regulatory say in those kinds of things. Silly me, I'm sure there's probably a whole bunch of case law that prevents that, but it just, you know, on the face of it, it seems like we should have some regulatory authority there.
Which, again, what Gary mentioned, you know, when it's a city easement, one that's what's given to us, yes, we do absolutely have that. These irrigation easements that run through subdivisions, when the water leaves the irrigation canal, that's generally where the irrigation district's interest ends. It no longer becomes their issue.
Right.
And so these easements that run through people's properties, they're an irrigation easement because there may be a line there, but there's no, you know, we don't go to the irrigation district and say, hey, you know, someone wants to build a wall in this easement, do you have an issue with that? Because they say that's not our easement. That belongs to that neighborhood association. In my personal life, I'm the treasurer of our neighborhood irrigation district. And we're currently working on trying to find where our irrigation line is. And what we know so far is it runs under everybody's fence. It runs under multiple retaining walls that have been built up over the last 60, 70 years that, you know, this has been happening. And the city can't, I mean, it would be impossible for us to track and protect all those irrigation lines from a city perspective. It just becomes unmanageable. So we protect the ones that we can, the ones that we have interest in. The private ones, like Councilmember Kulas said, those are truly private property owner issues, and very challenging for us to get involved. And we don't like to get in between neighbors as they squabble over walls and fences on irrigation lines. Anyway.
I can appreciate that. The second thing, I guess, is the idea of what's permitted and what doesn't have to be permitted. It seems like we're setting ourselves up for failure in a way by having non-permitted activity there, so that there's stuff going on that, you know, as a private owner, I kind of do whatever I want to do in my own little kingdom until I exceed, you know, whatever, 30 inches or 36 inches or whatever it may happen to be. You know, like building, if it's under whatever, the 100 square feet, I don't have to have a permit to build a shed on my property or whatever. But where you're, you know, that one I can understand. I mean, it's minor. It's not to such a degree that somebody's going to fall down and kill somebody or whatever. But when we're starting to talk about a wall, we need. It would seem to me we ought to know about that. What's the downside of having any wall being permitted?
At what point do you, what's the threshold? At what point, and if you start looking at side property lines and how common a small retaining wall or in your yard, it is you're really opening Pandora's box. I don't recommend you go there, but we have two things here. We have an option that other jurisdictions have used, and you could explore that further if it's of interest to the council, the rear yard, with 30 inches, 36 inches. You know, if you had a lower area in that backyard, on that easement, it would be easier to access if there was a problem. Well, easier to dig. Might not get a cat in there, but I've had multiple times where I had a 10-foot easement with an irrigation line in my
my past house where crews had to come and fix it. But there wasn't a wall blocking it.
Right.
So, I mean, there'd be some improvement, and there'd be some, on that interface between the two, there'd be some improvement. And we've tried to focus it on things where, yes, it will be challenging to enforce over time, but we have some tools to try to educate, inform, and try to help with that situation as developments go into place. So if it's desired, we can pursue that. We can work with our planning commission and put something together for it.
I would like to see that. I like the 5-foot, setback, although it does create that kind of no man's land in there, and who takes care of it, and keeping it cleaned out. It's like the creek that runs, down out of the canyon,
Yep. I'll push back a little bit on over-regulating a 2-foot wall. I think that isn't where we should be going. I think the new construction and new buildings and those kind of things is a proper step, but telling someone that they can't build a 2-foot retaining wall and from the dirt that they use to plant 2 trees to make their yard flat is what we should be doing as city council members or the city, or spending staff time doing those kinds of things. I think it's a overstretch, and I think it's a waste of funds.
We would
Well,
be
and I think you
reviewing a
mentioned
lot
this-
of building permits.
I think you mentioned this wouldn't be targeted at just an individual homeowner. This would be a new development where retaining walls would have to be built around the new development.
Correct. Looking more at the relationship, let's say as we're doing more infill, looks more at the relationship to these new developments. We do have some other components, though, that I think some positive tweaks that, and then a question on whether you want to go a certain direction, if we could run through those.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, while we were already in our slope protection section of our code, which is where our retaining wall standards are, we get a lot of questions about retaining walls, and there in our current code is some ambiguity in the way it's written, and so Matt has taken some time to help clarify those, and so it's easier to read and implement. And so in our current code, we allow for walls up to 7 feet tall. If you need a wall larger than that, taller, then it needs to be terraced at 5 feet. You take a step back at 3, then you can go up again at 5. That was a little bit, it's in there, it's a little bit ambiguous in how it was written, and so we've taken an opportunity to clarify that, and I'll show you a graphic in a minute that Matt has put together. We're looking at multiple walls. Sometimes people want to have a 7-foot wall, and then they want to build another 7-foot wall, and they say, well, they're 2 different walls and they're not connected to each other. And we then get to chat with our engineers and our building official, and how those walls interact with each other. So we're looking at walls, how they relate to each other, and height and a tiering system. We've added some graphics. And then we currently have a deviation process. So in some instances, people need walls larger than 7 feet. Most of them are going to be cut walls as opposed to fills, but we require those to be obscured. So there's a process that people can go through in order to show that that wall is being obscured, either through the house that's being built or landscaping or a combination. And so we've updated those, working on updating those to provide clear standards, a clear process. Again, we get some questions on how do I do this? I'm not understanding the code, and so Matt spent some good time clarifying that. This is the graphic that I mentioned. So this is our current standard. So if you have a wall that's going to be over 7 feet, we require it to be tiered, but we don't have a graphic. And so this will just help people visualize what that will look like as they would like to move their.
So the first wall could be 7 foot.
No, so that's the problem in our current code, is that's what people think, is
Okay.
my first wall can be 7 feet and then I have to tier.
Okay. So
The reality is if I need a wall system that's more than 7 feet, you have a 5-foot wall.
So then it's
And then
multiples
you
of
have a
5 and
bench,
3.
and then you have another 5-foot wall. So that's part of that clarification is
Okay.
you don't just get your 7-foot wall and then tier.
Yeah.
So if you need more wall, then it gets tiered. And so that's part of this update as well as clarifying that issue. Matt's done a really good job of working within the existing framework. So we didn't want to over-regulate. We don't want to add a lot of new standards. But we needed to clarify some, and I've addressed most of those. And the final bullet item is, so we allow an administrative deviation process that goes through staff that we look at with the building permit. We wanted to add a little bit more there to allow for some instances where, for example, if we're in a critical area for slope or habitat for mule deer, we want to have the least amount of impact possible. And sometimes that might mean a larger wall. We want to be able to accommodate that. And so this would allow the community development director in those instances to authorize a larger wall if it is in the public's interest to protect the critical area. And we can, another proposal is that sometimes transportation improvements require larger wall systems. We want to have a clear pathway that we can work with Public Works to make sure that they're can have the walls that they need as they build roads and infrastructure in our community. So an add-on that clarifies and makes it easier to implement the code in certain circumstances. And then we wanted to bring, as Glenn mentioned, a couple of questions to you. And I don't have any good pictures. Sorry, I don't have any. But first question is, should the code include an additional setback from walls, for example, from the back of a sidewalk? So envision a moment, a sidewalk running down a city street and a wall constructed right adjacent to that sidewalk. It could be up to 7 feet tall if it's a single wall. Are you okay with that, or would you like us to apply an additional setback, maybe 1 or 2 feet from the back of the sidewalk before they can have a large retaining wall structure? It's just something that has come up as we've looked at the code, and we wanted to pose that question to you.
I guess we had some good internal staff discussion on that.
Absolutely.
And what was the conclusion of the internal staff discussion?
We want to hear from you.
I think that creates the potential of the weed strip.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the height
Mhm.
of the wall, and it depends
And
on
the
the
structure
size of
of
the
it, is
street.
it stepping away?
You know, if I'm walking or driving, but particularly if I'm walking next to Western, which I still don't understand why the sidewalk width at Western is the same as in a residential area, but if I'm coming down, like when I walk down from the cemetery, and there's a retaining wall there, and Western with a little bike lane, you feel hemmed in there. Across the street is a chain link fence. I don't feel that way there. Same height. It's just open. I don't quite feel as hemmed in. It kind of depends. But I also know situations where we've required setbacks, not we here, but the royal me, engineering required reading the whatever, the appendix chapter 33 or whatever the heck the grading code is, to require a 2-foot setback of a retaining wall in a front yard from the back of the sidewalk. And that did end up being a weed patch. That did end up being a problem. And these were just the short walls. So
my spin on it was we haven't seen a lot of issues with it. And so on my side, I was thinking, well, haven't had a lot of challenge with it, so I wasn't proposing that we add this additional set of regulations. However, we wanted to bring that before you because we've never seen good thought put together on it. Do you see it as a concern? And if you do,
we can craft something on
I guess my take is, you know, off the top of my head with this, is that it depends. Like so many things in life that get messy. I think a lot of it would depend, like Mark is saying, I think it would depend on the width of the sidewalk. So if you've got a narrow sidewalk and I don't know if you're talking about walls, is it possible to have a 7-foot wall that's vertical?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
if I got a sidewalk that's, you know, that wide in a 7-foot wall, with traffic on the other side, that is not a good feeling. I mean, you really are running, like, you're running the gauntlet in there. Now, if you have a wider sidewalk and that wall is stepped back, then it opens away from you and it's a whole different kind of feeling.
So then we make regulations so that property can't be developed and we can't have someone living there.
That's my concern.
So that's my concern. And when I travel up to the Snake River to go steelhead fishing, and we're on the Snake River, we're on a highway, there are 20 and 30-foot walls with a house sitting on top. There's walls right there, and it's a sidewalk and a highway and a wall that goes way up there and a house sitting there. So I see those things when I'm traveling around, and the next development of our city is hills. Maybe it won't be a 30-foot wall with a house sitting on it, but we are going to run into this more and more. So that's my concern. We are looking at 7 feet when we may be needing 20 feet. And why are we limiting that? And it's just going to be an empty vacant lot with weeds all over it.
That was my concern, is by the time you keep adding these things, you're just going to take some properties that might be developable and make them undevelopable. And we do have places already, just because of the way roads got built and things, that there are walls right against sidewalks in a number of locations when you walk around town. And I always like the question, well, how come they got to do it and I can't? And that's always a fun answer, right? Well, we changed the rules and they're grandfathered in, so sorry. So I mean, if it was me, I'd leave it right on the back of the edge of the sidewalk until it becomes an issue. Give someone some more flexibility.
From a public works perspective, I would chime in. I mean, if you choose to do that, then when we're builders of a lot of walls.
Right.
Public works are road projects. So if we say, oh, we have to have a 3-foot or a 5-foot setback, now the city's buying more of the person's yard to fit that. So let's just keep that.
We also have dry utilities behind the sidewalks quite often.
Yeah.
And the right of way, just to complicate matters, right of way maybe at the back of the walk, or maybe beyond the back of the walk. So that's why those things, if they're in the right of way or at the sidewalk, usually fall in our wheelhouse.
And that's a good point from Gary. I appreciate that. I was going to show you on the survey on the right, that first, you've got the property line on the public street, and that first dashed line is an easement. Generally incorporates the sidewalk, but maybe not. So, and going back to our earlier discussion, trying to keep walls out of easements.
Often a utility easement, by the way, and the right
Correct.
of way line is actually in the sidewalk on new.
So, looking for some direction. So please correct me. I'm getting the sense that not a change on the front yard approach for walls at this time, but am I hearing that there's interest in proceeding with the planning commission, who hasn't seen this yet, to look at the changes to the rear yard as far as the 5-foot setback for walls that require building permit, and then 36-inch limit with exceptions for need between the rear yard for a fill slope? Is that of interest? Continuing to look at that with the planning commission and developing a recommendation for consideration?
And that's consistent with other cities' codes?
Some other jurisdictions we've seen have done that.
Can you give me a name of a jurisdiction that's done that?
The 30-inch?
Yeah.
Bellevue and Olympia both have, I think in the rear and side, I believe, or at least rear, you'd be limited to a 30-inch wall.
Thank you.
I would agree, I would vote for that. I think that, that 30-inch, one of the things back to that dealer issue was that, and I don't know how high that wall was. I was, what, 4 foot or something?
4 feet.
4 foot.
Just under 4 feet, so they didn't need a permit.
Permit, yeah. The issue there is just simply changing the whole configuration of that lot from the lots around it. And then you end up with, house built on top of that looking down. And so I think I'd go for the shorter distance, the shorter height rather than the taller. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, we'll look at that, and, you can kind of see in this picture, the homes that were built here are single-story homes.
Mhm.
This zoning district allows easily 2-story homes, so we get this question a lot as well, right? Why is somebody allowed to build such a large structure next to my property line? They can look into my property, right? They look over my fence. Yes, people are building 2-story homes. Zoning districts are multifamily, allow 3 or more stories, and a 6-foot fence isn't going to do you much privacy from those.
Help a little bit on the
It'll help a little
interface.
bit.
So if you put screening or landscaping up at the edge, at some point, that'll help a little bit. And then if you reduce the height a little bit at the base, that first 5 feet, that can help some as well.
Yeah, boy, you guys, it's a challenge. It just,
We've gone
I
around
mean,
and around and
there's the
around.
ones without the retaining wall, right? The nice subdivision, and then someone goes in and does 8 to 10 feet of fill and does the proper sloping of it. So here's my 6-foot high fence, and here's 4 more feet of fill, basically. They're sloughing up against my fence. And who's speaking for that property owner?
Yeah.
There's no retaining wall,
Yep.
so there's no permit.
But again, I think where we're going with this is a developer is coming in to do a whole new development. In the case of the one at the top of Springwater, they wanted to carve out part of the hillside so they could put more houses in there. And they didn't want to pay to haul all that dirt off, so they just piled it up. It was for their convenience. It had nothing to do with utilities or sewer flow or anything else. And it didn't fit with the existing neighborhood. And that's the shame of it.
None of it will.
And you think we can write a code that would prevent that from happening?
We can write a code that can try to affect it and will have some impact. It won't stop the violations, and over time you will hear about the violations, I'm sure.
At least it gives them something to stand on.
But we'll do our best to educate and inform and bring it up in covenants and plat notes. And look at, coordinate with engineering and review of build grading plan. We'll do our best.
In terms of front yards, though, no, it's not a perfect world. But how do we, with front yards with street access and heights, you can end up in the same difficult situations with people that want to do that and then punch a driveway through. And Gary's staff is Mr. Owen's staff is going to tell them that you have to be no higher than a certain grade for, 20 feet entering the roadway and whatnot. And they say, I already did it. I'm going to go to Mr. Jammerman, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Kuntz and whatnot. I mean, we got to be willing to back up and say, too bad, so sad. Otherwise, any program that you can spend 100 hours developing the best ordinance in the world, if we're not willing to say too bad, so sad on some of these cases.
But the other key is when they come in for the permit, they're given all this information so that it's very clear.
It's easier to get forgiveness than permission, Keith. Let me tell you,
I
after
agree
6 decades of doing this.
Yeah, I agree with you, but if we didn't make it clear to begin with, then we have that little, well, it was a gray area.
Doesn't matter how clear it is if it's an election year.
And as you know,
Doesn't matter how clear it is.
and code enforcement is hard, right? That's
Yeah.
hard stuff.
Yes. But you have to start somewhere.
All right, you guys got your marching orders?
We do, and are you okay with some of the flexibility components, or clarification components we're looking at as well?
Yeah.
I think we're wishing you luck.
We'll be back.
Thank you for
I think that's the
taking a
best, I
swing.
think that's the
swinging.
best way to put it.
Really do appreciate
Best
it.
of luck.
Yeah, best of luck.
Break a leg.
At some point, you'll have the hard job, though.
All right,
Only when we're running for
I
reelection.
really don't have much on the mayor's report. I will tell you that we've been meeting for infra stuff internally for the last couple of weeks, just getting, sort of figure out where we're headed. I think that's really about all. Laura, anything to add in terms of,
We did the Riverfront Master Plan meeting on Tuesday. It was very well attended. We had over 120 people show up and
I
give
know Mark was
comments.
going at 10, and I know
Yep.
Jim was there when I was there.
Yep. And then the museum is also doing kind of a visioning process for their exhibits. And I know you attended, I attended, I think Councilmember Bailey attended. So lots of good stuff going on the
Yeah,
plot.
really
planning
good.
piece.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the one down at, for the Riverfront Park.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really well organized and
Yeah.
I think we were able to gather a lot of really good information.
And the survey's still up
Yes.
for
Thank you.
providing input, Survey Monkey through online application.
Yeah, so I think that one was good too, and I think people are generally excited for improvements to the park area. It's really heavily used, and so I think the consultants were pretty surprised about the number of people.
I saw that you had a big stack of
Yeah, no,
forms there. That
they
was
got some really
good
good,
sign.
really great feedback. We got a couple weeks before we meet again. We don't meet next week or the week after, so I don't know when that is. We will have a revised agreement between the city and the Public Facility District, sort of updating. If you remember the old agreement, we had to set aside some money in case tax revenue didn't come up. We're also going to the bond market, so we have to sort of certify the 2/10 and some of that. So there'll be an agreement probably the first week in August, or the first meeting in August, that just sort of re-ratifies and update what we're already sort of doing. Mark?
National Night Out, remember, August 3, Tuesday, August 3.
Say that again?
National Night Out
Yes.
occurring at 3 different parks. So pick your park or 2,
Okay.
as the case may be. And if you have not let Captain Reinfeld know that you're available, please do so, so he can put this in connection with either an officer or a VIPS person. I think what I'm going to do at Washington, I'd offered to throw some money in the kitty when they were trying to find shave ice and whatnot, and I don't think that's going to work out, but I think I'll maybe take a bunch of Otter Pops or something and hand them out with food handler gloves on.
Yeah, exactly.
So 6 to 8:30, Lincoln Park, Lincoln Park Picnic Shelter, Washington Park Picnic Shelter, and Rotary Park South Picnic Shelter. That's the Maple Street Picnic Shelter.
Okay.
Very good.
Other than that, we're being busy.
Yeah.
Lots going on. Yes.
Just a quick little announcement. I think you should be aware of it. The Washington State Republican Party wants to have their annual convention here next year. It's 1,500 plus people. When they
good.
originally talked to me, could be 1,800 to 2,000. It's a great opportunity for the city. A lot of people coming. It's in June. It'll be June 2nd through the 4th of 2022. Laura, I'll send over some information to you tomorrow about it because I do think staff should be and the city should be aware of it. So,
Yeah, and I think my only thought is, hopefully by then the restaurants are all up and going and fully staffed and be
Yeah.
able to handle the number of people in town. That's what I was talking to Laura about. It's concerned me just as they're trying to get going and they're short-staffed. And if we filled up the city tomorrow, there'll be a lot of people going through the McDonald's drive-thru.
it's tough. It's
Yeah.
really tough right now. In order to do this, we would have to use not only the convention center, but the town Toyota Center. And I'm meeting with them tomorrow to work on the proposal.
Oh, good. Okay. All right, anything else for good of the order?
Back to parks just for a second.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how we're doing getting cameras for more of our parks. We talked about that, and I think so far that's been one of the best deterrents we've been able to do is,
So I think
Get the
every
video out there.
time someone has asked for one, I think we've provided the funding for it, whether they're all in or not, is something that Rob will have to check with Aaron, but I don't think we've denied any of the cameras yet. So you might just have Dave take a run, or your staff or chief figure out where all the cameras are. Most parks have multiple. Any of the new ones we do have multiple.
Yeah. Do we have them down at Hale at this point?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So we have camera photos of some of the bad things going on. If it's really bad, it gets sent off to chief, but it's just an interesting, but again, at night, it didn't show up as well. So again, I think chief's comment is if it's lit, you can see more of it. Yeah.
The last camera project that Aaron was working on was at the plaza.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're
Okay. Yeah, we have them at Hale, we have them at Centennial, we have them at all the trailheads. Lincoln Park's got them.
Good to know we're rolling them out.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.